Hi everyone, it's Chris. Welcome back to another video. Thank you very much for popping by today. Now, I watched a video, I can't remember who made it actually, but they were talking about this album and Led Zeppelin's Coda from 82, and I put a comment in the box beneath saying I thought actually it was complete tosh, this album, but I thought what I would do is I would revisit it, because a lot of people were very positive about it. And I also revisited a number of albums that I dismissed at the time by bands that I usually like. Now, Coda is from 82. It's kind of a posthumous odds and ends release. Now, after John Bonham's death in 1980 did he die? The band dissolved, but Atlantic Records still wanted one more album, and Jimmy Page put together Coda, which is kind of like outtakes recorded between, I think, 1969 and about 1978. But rather than being some sort of coherent artistic statement, what we get here is, I think, a really badly curated scrapbook of an album. I do like the cover. I think the cover is great. It's got a nice feel to it, good look to it. And actually, the first side, there's the track listing, is considerably better than I remember it. We're going to groove from 69 is a decent funk blues kind of opener. Poor Tom is very Led Zepp 3. I Can't Quit You Babe is probably as good as the studio. It's a live sound check from 1970, I think. Hardly essential though. And Walter's Walk is kind of like, I think it's from the Houses of Holy era. It's kind of a muscular riff, but it's quite a flat production. So side one is okay. Side two, however, I think is absolute tosh. Ozone Baby, I think that's Into the Outdoor Session. It's a fast rocker, which is kind of unusual for late period Led Zeppelin, but it's a little bit more concise, a bit more kind of, maybe a bit more new wavy possibly, I don't know, but it's not very good. Darlene is a boogie woogie piano rocker, sounds like a jam. Bonzo's Montreux is just awful. It's just this horrendous drum solo. And Wearing and Tearing is kind of quite aggressive, kind of almost got a punkish energy to it. But as an album, no coherence. It feels like a contractual throwaway. There are tracks where people say, oh, what might have been? I kind of get that slightly, but is it essential? Absolutely not. Is it their worst? I think so, by quite a long way. Next up is this, Drama by Yes. This came out in 1980. And by 1980, this was a band in turmoil. John Anderson, Rick Wakeman had decided, didn't like the direction of the band and were leaving, and that left Steve Howe, Chris Squire and the drummer, what's his name, Alan White, looking for replacements. And then enter, stage left, we've got this unlikely pair of Trevor Horn and Jeff Downes, both of which have been in the Buggles. So we've got this odd fusion of prog rock giants, Yes, and this new wave pop experimental duo, really strange. And did it work? At the time it was a big no for me, but playing it back, I actually quite enjoyed it. Machine Messiah is a good riff from Steve Howe, vocals from Trevor Horn, surprisingly strong, a bit darker than John Anderson's. It's possibly one of Yes's heaviest songs, actually. Does It Really Happen that closes the side, a little bit more direct than much of kind of 70s Yes. Probably shows the direction of travel and a more streamlined sound that they were looking for that would take them into the 80s. Into the Lens is just a rerun of the Buggles song I Am a Camera, and it's kind of transformed into this sprawling Yes kind of prog epic, really. It's got kind of shifting structured layered vocals. It's a decent song, actually. Tempest Fugit, which closes the album, kind of fast punchy closers, pretty decent. So that was a lot better than I thought. It's kind of a bit of late 70s complexity with kind of early 80s urgency. Now, at the time, including me, audiences really rejected this lineup. But in hindsight, I think the album holds up surprisingly well. It bridges the gap between the symphonic Yes of the 1970s and the much more streamlined Trevor Rabin-led version of the band that did 90125 in the kind of 80s. So it was, it's a decent album. Next up, I revisited this one, Never Say Die, Black Sabbath from 78. This was a band in turmoil also. I saw them on this tour, actually, and Van Halen with the support blew them away. I bought both singles from this album, but I didn't buy the album until years later, and then for completion only. It's a funny, really strange album. The opening track, Never Say Die, the title track, is fast, it's energetic, feels quite close to 70s rock rather than doomy Sabbath, and I love it personally, I really do, but for me it's downhill from there. Johnny Blade, strange chorus, it's got this synth opening from Don Airey who plays on it, which is all right. It's quite heavy, it's quite quirky. It shows Sabbath experimenting with a kind of a slightly more theatrical kind of sound. Junior's Eyes, written for Ozzy's father, who died quite close to them recording this, is kind of a half-felt vocal on it. It's a half decent. Hard Road was a single, mid-tempo rocker with harmonised vocals and ad-libs towards the end. Ooh, it's a hard road. It's kind of catchy. It's almost sing-along. You know, stylistically, it's miles away from the kind of weight of their early work. And then you've got songs like Air Dance, which is probably the most unusual Sabbath track ever. It starts off with this kind of delicate piano and then has jazz fusion textures before it explodes into kind of a hard rock middle section. You know, you either think it's a great bit of experimentation or you think it's proof that this band have absolutely lost the plot. Over to You that's not Sabbath. Breakout definitely isn't Sabbath. It's like Breakout is like this full-on brass-led instrumental jam. It borders on jazz rock. It's bizarre, kind of being on a Sabbath album. This was an album that was recorded in a rush. Ozzy had left and then came back, and they didn't want the songs that had recorded, I think it was Dave Walker, so they recorded a whole new load of songs, and it feels very rushed. Swinging the Chain is sung by Bill Ward, which he also sung another one, didn't he, on Technical Ecstasy, I can't remember that, but absolutely not for me. This is for completists, and this is why I've got it. It's for curious listeners, possibly. It's got some reasonable stand-up moments. I think the title track is good, but other than that, nah. Then I revisited, let's get that. Breathless by Camel. Now, by 78, Camel had carved out a reputation for being a good lyrical, melodic prog band, thanks to albums like Snow Goose, Moon Madness, Mirage, which was brilliant. But the late 70s were quite unkind to prog bands, and for Camel, this album Breathless is kind of a continuation of some of their symphonic sound, but definitely a movement towards a more concise pop-tinged kind of approach. It marks the end of the road for Peter Bardens, who was one of the founding members. But there are some decent moments on it, I think. The opening track, Breathless, is kind of breezy, it's jazzy. I'm not going to say it's Steely Dan-like, but it certainly is surprisingly smooth. For Camel, I would have said. Echoes is a really good song. It's kind of about a 6-7 minute song. It's a multi-part kind of song, full of shifting moods, a bit jazzy. Some really good guitar, as ever, from Andy Latimer. One of the kind of last classic Camel kind of epics, really. It's a really good song, and I think the highlight of this album. Wing and a Prayer is straightforward. It's quite pop orientated, not sure it's really Camel. Down on the Farm, too whimsy for me. Starlight Ride, too bland. Summer Lightning, that starts off side 2, is kind of disco inflected, but it has an absolutely sensational guitar solo from Andy Latimer, and it absolutely saves the song. Otherwise it would be far too lightweight. You Make Me Smile is kind of like a pop rock bouncy kind of song. The Sleeper is proggy jazz fusion. It's quite decent, some good guitar again, kind of multi-layered, bit of a sense of adventure to it. It's kind of decent. And then Rainbow's End closes the album, which is kind of melancholic and atmospheric. It's okay as a closer, but it's a strange album, really. It straddles two worlds for Camel: the kind of melodic prog, kind of lushly produced band of the sort of 70s, which they built their reputation on, and then this kind of more streamlined, accessible band that maybe the record industry had kind of demanded of bands in the late 70s. The songs are shorter, more emphasis on vocals than any kind of instrumental exploration, which had been a feature of previous work by this band. But it's okay. It's just an uneven transitional album, but it's not without its gems. Next up, Nightlife by Thin Lizzy. This is from 1974, I think. The first album recorded by that classic twin guitar lineup with Scott Gorham and Brian Robertson, but they're very much finding their feet here. I love the cover. It's a Jim, I think his name is Jim Fitzpatrick. Yeah, he did quite a few covers for them. The album cover is considerably better, I think, than the album. I always think my criticism of Thin Lizzy, and I love Thin Lizzy, but I always found that they sounded too lightweight on record compared with live, and this is definitely an example of that. It's mellow, it's soulful, it's introspective. There's a kind of a smoky late night feel to it, and I suppose Nightlife is kind of an apt title, really. You get a blend of soft rock, R&B, blues influence, and you get Phil Lynott, who is fantastic, but he's exploring his love of balladry and storytelling on here. The production is Ron Neverson, and it's probably just too smooth, too polished. It's far too polished, I would have said, for Thin Lizzy. It just sounds sanitized, really. She Knows, that starts off the album. It's kind of is a mid-tempo kind of opener. It sets the mood with restraint rather than any fireworks. Nightlife is just too Van Morrison for me. Only Money is alright. Still in Love with You is probably the crown jewel of this album. It's a stunning ballad. Features Frankie Miller on vocals as well as Phil Lynott. It also has a solo by Gary Moore on it, which Brian Robertson refused to change because he said it couldn't get any better. And it became Brian Robertson's kind of signature song, really, but ironically, but it's a great song. Frankie Carroll, Rubbish. It's only 2 minutes and it's up the end, so you can pick the needle up. Showdown, it's okay, funk tinged. Banshee, short instrumental. Philomena, this ode to his Phil Lynott's mother. Shalala is a kind of energetic rocker that's a showcase for Brian Downey, who without a doubt is the most underrated drummer in rock history. I love him, he's brilliant. And Dear Heart is this soft orchestrated closer. Nah, it's awful. So my overall impression of this, just far too subdued. It's a fascinating transitional record when they move from a four-piece from a three-piece into a four-piece, but is it any good? No, not really. Next up, No Place to Run by UFO. I saw them on this tour, actually. They were supported by Girl, who were excellent, and so were UFO, but this marked a turning point. Guitarist Paul Chapman entered the band, stepped in after the turbulent years, but brilliant years, of Michael Schenker. It's produced by George Martin, the George Martin, and it's a slicker, more polished kind of sheen, therefore, than the kind of fire of the bands, the albums that came before. It feels more Americanized, more radio friendly. It's got a little bit of a polish to it, really. Now, Paul Chapman was never a Schenker clone, never, and he wisely didn't try to be. His playing is quite direct, it's quite muscular, but it's nowhere near as fluid and as melodic as Michael Schenker. The star of the show has lots of UFO albums is Phil Mogg. I think he's a fantastic vocalist, but George Martin just softens them too much for me. It's not Lights Out, it's not Obsession, but there are some decent moments on it. Letting Go is a decent rocker. It opens the album after a short instrumental. Mystery Train, which I'm pretty sure is an Elvis Presley song, that's kind of like a decent hard rock kind of song. Young Blood was the single, really plodding. Take It or Leave It, forgettable. Any Day's a decent closer. So it's not without its moments. It doesn't breach the kind of stratospheric heights of the kind of the classic Schenker era of UFO, but I don't think it should be as dismissed as much as I have done in the past. Yes, George Martin produces it and it's too polished and it does feel transitional, less fiery. It's not essential UFO, but it's actually a strong enough record to make a reasonable listen, actually, and it shows that they could thrive post Schenker, and live with Paul Chapman they were very good, I felt. Next up is 1982's Signals by Rush. Now this is a band, I love this band in the sort of 70s, very early 80s. This is from 82. They had a reputation for being a very ambitious band, and they had just done Moving Pictures in 81, and they faced this kind of crossroads. Do you pursue the kind of proggy rocky thing, or do we go into the sleek technology driven sound of the new decade? They chose the latter, and this definitely turned me off the band in 1982. There's lots of synthesizers here from Geddy Lee, and the thing I didn't like about it at the time is that Alex Lifeson's guitar is often pushed back in the mix and Geddy Lee's synths dominate. The lyrics very much less fantasy and sci-fi, more about the kind of leaning into technology and so on. It possibly gained lots of new listeners, this album, or this band did, but they lost me at the time. But when I played it back, I think actually, do you know what? I probably appreciate it much more now than I did then. Subdivisions, I think, is fantastic. It's one of the defining Rush tracks of the 80s. You know, Neil Peart's lyrics about suburban conformity and teenage alienation, it's poignant, it's powerful. I absolutely love that song. Analog Kid is probably the most guitar centered of all the songs on this album. It's kind of a bridge between classic Rush and the new direction. Chemistry, the third track, is it? Yeah, Chemistry. It's written by all of them. It's all right. Digital Man is funky. It's got a kind of it's quite bass heavy. It's got a reggae inspired rhythm to it. It's just not for me. I find it very jarring, but there is some incredibly good guitar on it from Alex Lifeson. The Weapon is a song I don't remember, and I need to revisit that because that's possibly a slow burner. I found that really interesting. New World Man I remember because that was the single, quite Police-like, I think, compact, catchy, reggae tinged, possibly proof that they could write pop-length song without losing their identity as Rush. Losing It, yeah, it's an interesting song. It's got electric violin on it. I don't know who plays it, but it's quite interesting. And then the closing track, Countdown, is kind of inspired by them witnessing the space shuttle launch back in the early 80s. So it's a decent closer. So as an album, it kind of marked Rush's full embrace of synth rock. You know, it's not as immediate as Moving Pictures, but that's their classic album. But I didn't like it in 82. I like it considerably more now. Next up is this, Pink Floyd Animals. So this came out in 77, and by then they were one of the biggest rock bands in the world, of course. They had Dark Side of the Moon in 73, they had Wish You Were Here in 75, and 2 years later they had this. And when it arrived, it kind of sounded considerably angrier and harsher and a little bit more politically charged than anything they'd done before. I think loosely it's it's inspired by George Orwell's Animal Farm, I think. And it came out in 1977, and to be honest, was just far too clever for me in 1977. I was 14, I was into the Pistols and the Ramones and all that kind of stuff, and I did reject it. I didn't like it. I loved Wish You Were Here, I loved Dark Side of the Moon, but I didn't get on with this at all. I guess this is an album that kind of reflects the mid-70s with its economic decline, its political unrest. It may well fit nowadays, I don't know. But it was really interesting to revisit this. It starts off with Pigs on the Wing, which is kind of like it's just brief acoustic opening, and then it goes into a really epic song, Dogs, which is, I don't know, over 15 minutes long. It's one of their really epic kind of songs, I think. It's got a mid-section with this kind of echoing acoustic guitar thing going on and synth textures, and it's actually quite a mesmerising part of the song. It's good. Pigs is decent. It's got a little talk boxy kind of guitar solo from Dave Gilmour. Sheep is the most recognisable song for me here. It's got a kind of a starts with this deceptive calm before it goes into controlled chaos. I like that a lot, actually. And then the album finishes with kind of how it starts. It's bookended by Pigs on the Wing Part 2. It's quite a bleak album, this. I love this iconic cover. I love the cover. It's quite bleak, it's quite uncompromising, it's quite dark, it's quite politically charged. It's not particularly a comfortable listen, but then again, it probably isn't meant to be, is it? But yeah, I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. Next up, this is an album that I ranked low in my ranking of Blue Öyster Cult albums. This is Revolution by Night by Blue Öyster Cult from 83. Now, by the early 80s, they'd already reinvented themselves several times. They started in the 70s this kind of dark, hard rock band with an occult kind of image, really. And then they broke into the mainstream with, obviously, Don't Fear the Reaper from, 76. And then in the 80s, they took on with albums like Mirrors and Fire of Unknown Origin, with that song Burning for You, a kind of more radio-friendly kind of sound. And when this arrived, I think they were trying to balance the kind of, still the Fire of Unknown Origin kind of imagery with the kind of the commercial pressure to produce something that was radio friendly, really. This is their first album without their founding drummer Albert Bouchard, and I think you can tell the the sound of the drums is quite poor, and it inevitably would have altered the band's chemistry. It's produced by Bruce Fairbairn, who produced some later Aerosmith and Bon Jovi, and it has a radio-friendly sheen to it. It's very much a product of its time. It leans into kind of AOR and arena rock more than maybe stuff that had come before. Glossy production, kind of little synth flourishes, streamlined songs. No, gone are the kind of weird titles, but we have a dark, you know, the kind of dark side of Blue Öyster Cult has definitely been dialed back, and it's been replaced by songs that are very much more melodic, more melodic hooks and less sinister than their kind of classic 70s stuff. Take Me Away is a good opener. That's co-written with a Canadian guitarist, Alden Over. It's a catchy, radio-friendly song. Good vocal from Buck Dharma, some nice synth touches on it. It's one of the highlights. It's really polished, mine, but it's good. Eyes on Fire is catchy, but again, very polished. Shooting Shark, co-written with Patti Smith. It's quite ambitious. It's a longer song, mixes synthesizer, saxophone, got a good vocal again from Buck Dharma. It's kind of atmospheric, it's haunting. I think it's one of their underrated songs. Shadow of California is a little bit darker, a bit more atmospheric, but still very, very 80s. Let Go is upbeat but very lightweight. Dragon Lady's a decent rocker, actually. It's more of a conventional rocker. And Light Years of Love, not really a closer. Again, another song co-written with Patti Smith, I think. But yeah, it's much better. It was a disappointment at the time compared with The Fire of Unknown Origin. And I remember when I got it, I thought it was rubbish. I didn't play it for years. It's very polished, awful drum sound, but considerably better than I thought. So I'm glad I revisited that one. Last album I revisited is this one, which is one of the most expensive albums to buy in my collection, actually. It's from 2003, Deep Purple Bananas, and it marked a new chapter for the band. It's the first album with Don Airey. John Lord had left the band. He was poorly and not long after this died, I think. Musically, Bananas kind of has this blend of, yes, some Purple heaviness, but also a modern hard rock sound. Mike Bradford is the producer, and I think he brings a certain sound. Now, Don Airey doesn't try to mimic John Lord, that kind of Hammond-drenched sound. He brings quite a varied array of sounds with kind of jazz-like touches and orchestral flourishes. And we've got Steve Morse, who I always thought was technically very good, but a tad uninspiring, if I'm honest. I think the production is a little bit compressed. This album doesn't even make it to Spotify, but I haven't played it for years. And when I say for years, I don't think I've played it much since I got it. I remember being really disappointed with it. So I did play it the other day. Now, House of Pain is okay. It's quite a funky, hard driving, very typical Deep Purple kind of opener. Sun Goes Down is slower, a bit moodier. Some nice Don Airey keyboards, maybe one of the stronger cuts. Haunted is this ballad, decent Gillan vocal, and it's got Beth Hart, I think, in singing on background vocals. It's all right. Razzle Dazzle, lightweight. Silver Tongue, a bit more aggressive. Walk On, softer, forgettable. Picture of Innocence. It's probably the song that's closest to their 70s spirit. I Got Your Number, which is a song I think was partly written by John Lord before he left the band. There's some nice interplay between Steve Morse and Don Airey. The last song is called Contact Loss, which is a short instrumental in tribute to the astronauts who died in the Columbia disaster of 2003, the space shuttle thing. So it's quite poignant, understated. I think it misses John Lord. Don Airey does bring his own flair, but lots of the songs feel a bit overproduced. But it shows a willingness possibly to evolve. It's a horrible cover. I don't think I'll play it very much, but I'm kind of glad I've got it in my collection because I'm a completist, and so I do need it. So it was interesting to revisit those albums. Many of them sounded slightly better than I thought. The Blue Öyster Cult one certainly did. The Rush one certainly did. But beyond that, there's probably a reason I didn't like it first time round. Anyway, tell me what you think in the comments below. Are there any albums that you dismissed years ago that you're now into? Put those in the comments, and I look forward to reading those, and I'll be back sometime soon with another video. Cheers.